everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're living more and more of our lives online these days, and, well, today's Deep Dive is all about how to stay safe out there.
It really is a digital jungle out there, isn't it?
Exactly. So we're diving into a report from Reflectus.
Ah, the web exposure management expert.
You got it. They basically analyzed a ton of websites to figure out, how secure are they, really? And, well, let me just say, the results are kind of eye-opening. Some of your favorite websites might be a lot riskier than you think.
That's right. And I think what's really cool about this report is that they use this thing called an exposure rating system.
An exposure rating system?
Yeah. Think of it kind of like a credit score, but for websites. They basically go through all these different factors, like trackers and third-party apps, and they give each website a grade based on how risky it is, like from A to F.
Oh, wow. So are we talking like failing grades here? Like, are websites flunking out of online safety?
Well, the average website gets a C.
Not great, huh?
Not exactly stellar. And get this, the sites that tend to score the lowest, entertainment and retail.
Wait, hold on. The sites where we stream movies and, do all our online shopping.
Yep, those are the ones.
See, that's a bit unsettling, right? I mean, think about how much time we all spend on those kinds of sites.
Exactly. And that's exactly why this deep dive is so important. I mean, you got to understand where the risks are hiding online, and more importantly, what you can actually do to protect yourself.
So who's to blame for all this risk? Is it careless coding or hackers, lurking in the shadows?
It's funny you should say that because, well, the report actually points the finger at a pretty surprising culprit: marketing and digital teams.
Really?
Yeah. They're actually responsible for a whopping 50% of the risk exposures.
Wait, so the very people who are, trying to grab our attention online are the same ones putting our data at risk? How does that even happen?
Well, think about it. I mean, marketing teams are all about speed and agility.
Right? Always got to be on the cutting edge.
Exactly. They got to launch campaigns fast. They got to constantly be trying out new tools. Yeah, it's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Right.
And sometimes, in all that rush, security kind of takes a back seat.
So basically they're leaving the digital doors wide open?
You could say that, yeah.
Yeah.
They might be, using way too many trackers or embedding apps that are kind of risky, or even relying on those public CDNs.
Which I know.
Convenient, for sure. But they can definitely introduce vulnerabilities.
Okay, so let's break down some of those specific risks, right? I mean, we all see those cookie warnings popping up everywhere, but what's the real danger of having, a ton of trackers on a website?
Well, each tracker is collecting data about you.
Yeah.
Right? Your browsing habits, what you like, even where you are.
So it's like digital breadcrumbs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's valuable info for marketing, obviously, but it's also a huge EE liability if there's, a data breach.
Yeah, suddenly all that information about you is just out there for anyone to grab.
That's right. And, the report actually called out the retail sector as being particularly bad with trackers.
Right. Didn't they say something like over half of their risk comes from those little data-hungry things?
53%, to be exact.
Yikes. And that's just one part of it, right?
Just the tip of the iceberg.
What else?
Well, the report also highlighted those third-party apps running on sensitive pages, checkout forms. Big red flag.
Okay. Yeah. Now that is scary. Imagine entering your credit card info and suddenly, boom, some vulnerable app compromises everything.
And that's not just, a hypothetical. The report actually found that 6% of websites had the TikTok pixel running on a payment page iframe.
Even big names like TikTok aren't doing things right.
It's a wake-up call, that's for sure. Even the websites we think are trustworthy. Well, they could be posing risks.
So you really got to be aware, even if you're on a site you use all the time.
Exactly. Speaking of which, let's talk about the lesser-known apps, those low-popularity ones. Another risk highlighted in the report.
Oh, so the ones that promise to do everything but shine your shoes.
Maybe not that obscure, but the point is they might not have the same level of, security testing as the more established ones.
It's like venturing into uncharted territory.
Exactly. There could be hidden vulnerabilities you don't even know about.
So should we just stick to the big names then? Is that the, safest approach?
It's a start, but it's not always that simple. Sometimes those lesser-known apps have features you really need, or they cater to a specific need. It's about finding a balance.
Right. Weighing the benefits against the risks.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of public CDNs.
Okay, I gotta admit, CDNs sound a bit technical to me. Can you break down the risk for us non-techies?
Imagine a public network of servers that deliver website content really quickly. That's a CDN.
Okay. Sounds convenient.
Oh, it is. Very convenient.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if that CDN gets compromised, every website using it is potentially at risk too. It's like a domino effect.
So what can we do about it? Should we just never use public CDNs?
Not necessarily, but businesses should at least consider private CDNs, or at the very least, really carefully vet those public CDN providers.
Do your research, basically.
Exactly. And for users, it's all about being aware that the risk is there.
All right, so we've got marketing teams moving fast, maybe breaking things a little bit, trackers everywhere, collecting tons of data, questionable apps lurking in the corners, and then this whole potential for widespread vulnerabilities because of public CDNs. It really is a jungle out there.
It is. But that's exactly why this deep dive is so important. We're here to guide you through all this, explore the findings in detail, and ultimately give you the knowledge to stay safe online.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
That's right. There's so much more to uncover.
I'm already eager to dig deeper.
Let's do it. The report actually goes into even more detail, like breaking down how different teams contribute to these risks. For instance, IT departments.
Ooh, hold that thought. We'll dive into that and much more right after a quick word from our sponsors.
So IT departments, they actually play a pretty big role in this whole web exposure thing.
Oh, really? I would have thought they were the ones building the digital fortresses, not leaving the gates open.
Well, think about it this way. Their top priorities are things like functionality and efficiency, making sure all the systems are running smoothly,
Right, keeping the lights on.
Exactly. And so security can sometimes kind of get overshadowed. The report actually found that IT departments, well, they often use apps that are loaded from, remember those public CDNs?
Oh, right.
And apps that access sensitive data, which kind of explains that 37% risk exposure we talked about earlier.
So it's kind of like another case of convenience maybe outweighing security.
Yeah, you could say that. Now, on the other hand, you've got marketing teams. They're much more likely to run apps in those risky payment iframes that we discussed.
Right, which create those really critical risks.
Exactly. Although it only accounts for about 33% of exposures.
So it's almost like this balancing act, right? It's focused on keeping the infrastructure up and running. Marketing's pushing for, fast deployment, user engagement, and security sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And that's why I think collaboration is so key here. If IT and marketing teams can actually understand each other's priorities and work together to put security first, well, we can make the web a much safer place for everyone.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Functionality, speed, A&D security.
Absolutely. But it's not just up to businesses to get this right either. We all have a role to play in keeping ourselves safe online.
That's true.
And I think that's what makes this report so valuable. It gives individuals the power to take control.
So let's talk about that. What can we do? What are some actionable steps that, everyday users can take right now to protect themselves?
Well, first things first, be mindful of the apps you're using. Do you really need all those extensions and plugins?
Probably not.
Right. I mean, the more you have, the greater the potential risk.
Yeah.
Limit yourself to just the essentials, especially on those sensitive pages, like logins and, payment forms.
So it's like spring cleaning for my browser.
Exactly. Get rid of the clutter. Another thing to pay attention to is the popularity of apps.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's not a foolproof method, but think about it. Those well-known, widely used apps, they've probably gone through a lot more security testing.
So, it's kind of like choosing a restaurant you're more likely to trust the one with, a ton of positive reviews.
Yeah, something like that.
So, stick to familiar names and proceed with caution in uncharted app territory. Got it.
What else? Remember those public CDNs we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, if you're a business owner, definitely look into alternatives like private CDNs. And if you're a user, just, be aware of the risks. Choose your providers carefully.
Look for those that are transparent about their security, right?
Right. And finally, the report really emphasized staying informed about those, online tracking technologies.
Yeah.
Understanding how those cookies and pixels actually work can really help you adjust your privacy settings.
Don't just click accept all.
Exactly. Take a minute to understand what you're actually agreeing to.
Be proactive.
Yes. It's all about being proactive, doing your research, and really taking control of your online experience. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to web exposure.
We've been handed this, roadmap for navigating the wild west of the internet.
That's a great way to put it.
The key takeaway here is that web exposure is a real threat. But we don't have to just sit back and be victims.
We can fight back. By being informed, being vigilant, and being proactive, we can navigate the digital world safely and confidently.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
I hope they realize that web exposure is a much bigger deal than a lot of people think. It's not just about those annoying cookie pop-ups. It's about the very real potential for data breaches and privacy violations, even financial losses.
And we have the power to minimize those risks, right? We can demand better from websites. A&D takes steps to protect ourselves. So what will you do differently after this deep dive? What changes are you going to make?
Well, for me, it's about continuous monitoring and adaptation. The digital landscape's constantly evolving. New threats are popping up all the time, so we can't just set it and forget it.
It's like this never-ending game of cat and mouse.
It is,
Ah.
and we need to stay ahead of the game.
Complacency's not really an option.
Not in this day and age, no.
We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive into web exposure with some final thoughts and, well, a call to action. But first, a message from our sponsors.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking all about this web exposure report from Reflectus. And, as I was looking through it, there were a few things that really stood out to me, like all this stuff about HTTP headers.
Oh, yeah. Those are important. The report actually found a pretty strong connection between, well, missing or misconfigured headers and a higher risk of, malicious activity.
See, now that's where I get lost a little. For those of us who aren't exactly fluent in, tech speak, can you explain what those are? HTTP headers, I mean?
Yeah.
And why they matter so much?
Sure. Think of them like instructions that a website sends to your browser.
Yeah.
And they contain information about, well, security settings, how the data should be handled. It's almost like a website's rule book for safety, you could say.
So if the rule book's missing or it's messed up, the site's more likely to be, attacked? Exactly. The report found that something like 70% of websites that had been compromised, well, they were missing some really important headers, compared to, only 50% of websites that didn't have any security issues.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference.
It is.
It really highlights how important those, little details are, even if you're not a tech expert yourself. It makes me wonder, if those headers are so crucial, is there a way for, website owners to make sure they're set up correctly?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of tools out there that can scan websites and check for missing or misconfigured headers. It's like a security checkup for your site.
So even if you don't know how to, build a website from scratch, you can still make sure it's secure. It's like making sure the locks on your doors are working, even if you didn't install them yourself.
I like that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And, that actually brings up another point the report made. Regular website audits.
Oh, right.
It's not a one-time thing,
Yeah.
It's got to be an ongoing process.
Like going to the doctor for a checkup, even if you feel fine. Better to catch those problems early.
Exactly. And those audits shouldn't just be about technical stuff. They should also look at, policies and procedures. How is the data being collected, used, protected, all that.
So it's about the human element, too, making sure the people running the website are, doing things the right way, taking security seriously.
Exactly. I mean, even the best security system in the world won't help if someone leaves the keys lying around, right?
Or forgets to lock the door.
Exactly. Which kind of brings us back to what we talked about before, individual responsibility. We can't just rely on tech companies to protect us.
We got to be proactive.
We do. We have to be aware, take responsibility for what we do online, and, demand better security from the websites we use.
It's a two-way street.
It is.
Businesses and individuals working together to make a safer digital world. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? Everything from, the nitty-gritty details of these HTTP headers to, the big picture stuff, like shared responsibility online. It's pretty clear that this whole web exposure thing, it's complicated, and it's constantly changing.
It is, yeah. But the good news is we're not powerless. We can do things to protect ourselves, stay informed, be vigilant, be proactive.
And navigate this digital world safely.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you really want our listeners to take away?
Web exposure is a real threat. It's growing every day, but we have the power to fight back. We can demand better. We can take steps to protect ourselves. And together, we can make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
That's a great message. We can't just ignore this. We can't bury our heads in the sand and hope for the best. We need to be informed, proactive, and engaged.
I completely agree.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Deep Dive. We hope you found this, insightful and empowering, maybe even a little bit alarming. But hey, awareness is the first step, right? To a safer, more secure online experience.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.